project. Okay. So once you've got your application configured, you can start it. And I'm just going to go back and make sure that Asterisk is still running. And we will start it. Okay. So in fact, let me go back and enable debug mode because I want to show you.
That's weird.
Why my control C is not working? I guess this is the live demo curse. All right, so I'm going to in debug mode, you can see all the commands sent to Asterisk and all the responses from Asterisk. So you can see that we've logged into the manager interface and that we're listening on the AGI port. And on the Asterisk console, you can see as well that Adhearsion is logged in. So let me show you now what an Adhearsion dial plan looks like. This is a obviously very simple example, but Adhearsion keeps the concept of Asterisk contexts. You can see here we have a context named Adhearsion, and it has a single command to run the Simon game. Let's change it to do something different. We can play Jason's favorite sound. We can dial a SIP here. And we can hang up. So that's a very simple example of how you would create dial plan applications. Now these commands are documented in our API documentation, but the syntax is designed to be very simple and to feel like Asterisk. So let me give you an example of why this is important. I'm not going to name names where I got this, but I'm going to paste this example from this is actually from an Asterisk extensions.conf that's a very widely deployed application. Can anyone tell me what that does exactly? I know the answer because I actually unwrapped all of the nested curly braces, square braces, and parentheses. But it takes a minute. And what's worse is if you're writing it, because if you miss one square brace, it could change the evaluation pretty quickly. What I want to do instead is show you how I would do that in Ruby. So this is, sorry?
No, there's people next door.
So this is equivalent logic implemented in Ruby. And my opinion is the second is a lot easier to read. The first,
you can actually unit test it.
And you can unit test it. The first line, the method here, this get variable goes and requests the channel variable from Asterisk, ring group method, and stores it in the Ruby variable method. The second line does the same thing with dial status. Here we check to see if method is equal to either first available or first not on phone. Or if the dial status is busy, we jump to a different context.
So you reject dodgy ideas like using method missing to sort of automatically go fish out an Asterisk variable, so you just use ring group method as a name right there.
Yeah, we did not do that. There is some method missing magic, but not to that level. It's an interesting thought, but potentially a dangerous one. Just because variables can be so many things. Yeah. So one distinction here that I should make is this extensions.conf line will jump within the same context. This jump down here is an adhesion jump. So it's actually not going to go to the Asterisk context A46. It's actually going to go to the adhesion context A46, where you could do additional stuff. But so you can see the context paradigm is in place. And it's very straightforward to transition from an extensions.conf layout.
And the point is, for someone new to Ruby, the top one really is very simple. You don't really have to know Ruby to do that stuff. But then there's nothing keeping you from doing full Ruby inside those contexts as well. So it gives you a simple way to engage, and then as you get more sophisticated, do everything.
Question here. So this is when you type directly on that dial and .rb file?
Yes.
Yes, not the extend line. The extend line was just from Asterisk, but right.
Sure, but, so there's no like dial plan base class that I inherit from and then I have my actions in there.
Right.
It looks like this is just a linear procedural way of just run through these until I match something.
So this, yes, this file is.
Again, I'm just coming from the Rails side thinking, okay, is this an equivalent of the dial plan base class and I inherit from it and then I put all my actions that are related to a concern there and then I create another concern and I inherit something else. I'm trying to see how I scale this, or does this file just grow?
Well, let me get to that in a minute because we do support that. The dialplan.rb is intended to be a helper to transition away from extensions.conf. Coming from an extensions.conf world, we didn't want to hit you with having to do a full Ruby, inherited object model. You can certainly do that, and I'll show you. Using components would be the best way to do that. And I can show you how to do that.
Yeah, and that's a key difference between something like Asterisk Java, which expects you to really know and have a full understanding of Java to do these things. Adhearsion is meant to also provide a bridge for people that don't necessarily know Ruby to actually start having a nice environment to do dial plan things without having to do extensions.conf, right? So it's but you're not inhibited from doing anything you want to within Ruby as well, right?
For my more complex applications, I usually do end up writing my own classes because then I can reuse them for whether I'm using Adhearsion or if I'm using Rails or if I use an RPC call to get at it. So I use classes for that.
Yeah, so we don't keep you from doing that stuff.
So if I could get some audience participation, for the next demo, I'd like to get a phone number, someone's business probably, so I don't record
not
your
a
cell
mobile
phone
number.
into the presentation. But does someone have a business number they'd like to give me?
A US number, sorry.
Sorry?
303
Okay.
632 9321.
9321. Okay.
Voice number. That's fine.
That should be fine.
Should work.
What I'm going to do in this demo is, so our friends at CloudVox, who are an Asterisk hosting company, they actually contribute to the Adhearsion project quite a bit. They have a really cool API that lets you do an ANI lookup on any US phone number. It'll show you the rate center, it'll show you the city, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I'm going to drop this in. Now, because this does use HTTP and JSON, I need to include a couple libraries. Okay, so what this will do when I call in is it's going to make an HTTP request to digits.cloudvox.com, and it's going to request, you know what, I hope the internet connection is working.
No.
This may explode. Sorry, I did all these things when the internet connection was working. But what the intent is, it'll go request this HTTP resource, which is a JSON block. It'll pull back in, parse it, and then we could use that information within Ruby.
It has things like time zone and I don't remember. It's got quite a bit of detail on it. It's like a white pages lookup.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
see
ANI.
ANI. CloudVox does it. Yeah.
And
Where they're aggregating the information from, I'm not sure. And they provide it for free as well. It's quite powerful.
yeah, it's looking like it's not going to play. But
It really does work, guys. Trust it.
But what I can show you here is when a call comes in via AGI, you get access to the AGI environment. And we re-expose that through this hash. You can see the caller ID that's set. Everything that's passed in through AGI is passed in as a hash, and then you have access to that in your call environment. So you can use those to make decisions on routing or rating. I mean, anything you would do within the dial plan, you can do here, obviously. Anything that's not passed into the environment, you would want to go get the channel variable using get variable. Yeah. So, sorry, that's underwhelming.
That's better when it works.
Yeah.
And I've lost my internet now, too.
Did you?
The internet's going.
No, that's all
It's
right.
okay. Well,
Thank you,
we can
though.
do it without. Thank you, though.
All right, well, so since I'm not going very fast with this, are there any questions? I mean, would anyone like to see an implementation of something? I'd be
Well,
happy
let's
to.
go over components a little bit.
Oh, yeah, I'm
right?
sorry.
And then I've got a demo that I can do that will actually work even without the internet. So
Okay. So to get back to your question about components, the component system allows you to define methods, classes, objects, and then expose methods back to dialplan.rb. So what I will often do is create a class that does whatever my business logic is, and then expose specific methods into dial plan. So when the call comes in, I make whatever decisions I need to accept it, and then call my method, and it will invoke the class. And I'll show you an example of.
Yeah, there's several scopes that you can expose methods into. There's methods for global, that'll go to everywhere. There's methods for events, right? So in your eventing system, we should actually show eventing a little bit as well. You can expose methods into there, methods for dial plan, methods for RPC, because there's an RPC interface that does RESTful JSON or DRB, of course, in those pieces. So there's a way of effectively going out and creating something that's more traditional, classes and modules and all that stuff, and then including it in.
So this is an example component we ship called the Simon game. If you're familiar with the game, it plays your number. You press the number on the keypad back. It plays your two numbers. You play the two numbers back, and you keep going until the computer outsmarts you. No, because it will make really long strings. Actually, I wrote a client and then run them at each other, and yeah. Okay, so at the very top, you can see we call methods for dial plan. And what this does is it allows you to define methods that will be exposed within dialplan.rb. So in this case, we expose the single method Simon game, which instantiates the class and passes the call into it. And then it actually starts the game.
So now in dial plan, you've got actually Simon underscore game that you could actually call on.
Exactly. And then it
Exactly.
does everything.
And that's the only line in dialplan.rb. Everything else happens here.
And the other big thing that's happened in 1.0 is now you can write components, create a gem, deploy it to Ruby gems, and then do a gem install. And then there's actually a race task. If it needs configuration, it'll bring it in. So now everything in components can actually be reshared as gems. And that's a big 1.0 thing that we've done. And then maybe I should plug in quickly.
Sure.
And then,
Quick question, the top section, I guess I could put that in a base class, and if I inherit all my classes from that, I could just have that automatically happen, correct? I wouldn't need to do that all the time.
You'll need to do the methods for, because the methods for is how you get the method to appear, to be visible to dialplan.rb.
that's how you scope it in.
But what I'm saying is if I have a class
Yep.
that does that for me, and I inherit all of them from that, then I'm in there, when we run, I could just run through it and all the classes, all the children classes, and just instantiate all of them.
Yes.
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 Right? I'm just trying to get something.
Yeah, as long as that executes when the object is loaded. Yeah, then yeah.
So, and last question, I noticed that you fire up a listener at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your interface to it, and then that one threads, or has its own processes as with this call? How does that work?
It's threads. So there are two threads that start up initially to consume AMI. The first actually listens to the events, and the second is only for actions. So when you do something like originate or transfer, that's an action you're sending to Asterisk, that happens in one thread. There's a separate thread for processing all the events, things like adding to queue and DTMF and channel bridging. There's two threads there. Every call that hits the AGI interface also spawns a thread. So all of those are separate threads. So as you can imagine, it can get to be a lot of threads if you have a busy system. We have seen cases where the Ruby 1.8 virtual machine, for lack of a better word, kind of falls over when there's heavy threading. So over, say, 50 calls, we start to recommend JRuby, because without any code changes, you can run the same application with the threading of the JVM, and it is much more stable.
This lack of network is really making things a little bit crazy. So the way you handle events is something like events each do, pass in the event, and then a block of code, right? So what will happen as the events come in over AMI, you just pass it blocks of code. There's actually namespacing in there as well, so certain types of events you can iterate off of as well on that side. So dealing with AMI events becomes trivial, with the events.rb file as well.
If I want to, for example, receive a call, check whether the user is registered to know how I want to handle several choices.
You could absolutely do it here. But you could do that through AGI. It just depends on what makes the most sense for your application. So the way to think about it is AGI is the synchronous application, and events.rb deals with the AMI, and then you have access to actually send commands down the AMI as well, from other parts of the system, like your components or your dial plan, etc. So you can do things that most AGI programmers, it's a blocking call. So if you do music on hold, you can't get past it when you're doing AGI. AMI, you can just send an event down to break them out of music on hold and carry on.
Actually,
and you
I've
do that
got
all
that.
very easily.
I've
Yeah.
got that as a demo. I can share that in a minute.
Yeah.